2027. My name is Medina, and I'm one of the public affairs specialists here. We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For tonight's agenda, we'll begin with opening remarks from our facility director, Dr. Braverman, followed by a progress update from Mr. McHenrick, our deputy director. Then we'll move into an insight into updated analysis from the Johnson Fain team. That team consists of Kursu Dalal and John Jackson. Then we'll be provided an update from our principal developer team. That team consists of Oscar Alvarado, Steve Peck, Tyler Monroe, and Brian DeAndrea. Next, we'll move into next steps and discussions from Mr. McHenrick. Following the presentations, we'll open the floor to questions and answers. Please feel free to submit your questions in the chat box at any point during this chat. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Steve Braverman. I'm the director of the VA Greater Los Angeles Healthcare System, and I appreciate your attendance and your interest in our master plan moving forward. I'm going to be consistent here and take the first couple of minutes to never leave an opportunity to talk about COVID and COVID vaccination for any meeting that we have. We're still in the middle of this current Delta variant surge. We are fortunate a bit in that because we're in Los Angeles, we're probably seeing the lower brunt of that surge compared to certainly the interior valley of California and then the southern states, especially Texas, Florida, Kentucky, not really a southern state, but they're one of the hotbeds at the moment. We peaked last week at about 16 inpatients. Today we're in the low single digits for COVID, and hopefully that trend will continue. Jury's still out since people will be coming back from Labor Day vacations from some of those hotbeds. Schools are in session and lots of football games and other activities where multiple people are engaged together. So we'll see how that goes. The strongest way to prevent COVID hospitalization and death is by getting vaccination, and there's no other way to say that. We are well positioned here within our healthcare system to continue to offer vaccination. We offer third shots now for those veterans and our staff, also spouses of veterans and caregivers of veterans who may be immunocompromised. And once the FDA approves release of a booster vaccination, we anticipate around the 20th of September for Pfizer, since that's the vaccine that we're primarily administering here, then we'll be able to accommodate veterans who are in that 6 to 8 months out from their last vaccination to be able to get that, as well as our staff, also veteran spouses and veteran caregivers. So, please continue to identify that interest and address anybody's misgivings with getting vaccination. President Biden today announced that all employees in the executive branch of government, all the federal employees, will be required to be vaccinated or have a medical or religious exemption within 75 days of today. That takes it right before Thanksgiving. We, however, in VHA have already been mandated to do that with an October 8th deadline, and we're well positioned to move into that process. So for every opportunity that you have, please talk about getting vaccinated. Today's meeting is the second of 4 of these types of engagements. The focus today, different from last time, is on those amenities that would be appropriate in the community for our veterans and how we're using the open spaces and the other opportunities that we have outside of the physical residential buildings themselves. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McHenrick.
Thank you, Dr. Braverman. Good evening. Just want to welcome everyone to this Town Hall number 2 session. We had one earlier today, but of course we had our kickoffs back in August 19th, but we'll move to the agenda here. Next slide. Yep, here we go. All right. So just want to talk for a second about the background here. We'll go through some of the slides to make sure folks are caught up if they didn't attend our prior one, and then we'll talk about the process we're in here with the development of Master Plan 2022-2027, this next 5-year period. You know, it has a little bit of a 10-year gap to it as well. So we'll lean into that. And then progress to date, going through all of that, and then we'll do some site analysis with Johnson Fain, and you'll hear from them, and then Principal Developers Group. They'll talk to you about some of the things they're doing and looking at and their priorities. And then next step, I'll come back and wrap up with some of the activities and milestones and make sure everyone understands how they can provide feedback and where we're going with the Federal Register and a working draft of the master plan document. Okay, next slide. This is a repeat slide from our kickoff town hall. Of course, we went over some of the basics in the draft master plan. The principal developer provided some basic information. We've hung those documents on the website, and we'll show you where to get those again at the end. We talked about building 209, building 205, 7, and 8 that are under construction to bring on some housing units the end of next year, about 180 of them. We're committed to the draft master plan process and this update activity that takes place every 3 to 5 years. And this will be our first update from the draft master plan. And then, of course, we talked about some of our mandates and our oversight partners. The West LA Leasing Act of 2016 commits us to this process and the activities we're doing. It provides OIG audits of our activities, and we work in conjunction with Veterans Community Oversight Board. The VCOEB provides recommendations to the Secretary of VA on the draft master plan and the master plan processes, all the activities outlined in it. Next slide. Okay, just a little recap. I won't spend much time on it, of the town hall that we had on August 19th, our kickoff. Discussed accomplishments and milestones. We wanted to catch everyone up with you know, SERS has a $150 million budget roughly, and that's what they came out with in 2016-17. And the land use reforms, and SERS has the 450 staff approximately right now. So they're really providing homeless veteran services in a platform that reaches across all of GLA's jurisdiction, from San Luis Obispo to Bakersfield to East LA, the San Gabriel Valley area, and here in West LA. So land use reforms called for in the West LA Leasing Act, and the desires of veterans to be more accountable on the land use, so it's more veteran centric. We have a land use committee and applications for land use go through that process. The environmental and historic due diligence we did. We really worked on some of those activities, and we'll talk about those. The PEIS, the Programmatic Environmental Inspection, the NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Agency, and the SHPO, the State Historical Preservation Office agreement. So we've worked on those over the last 3 to 4 years. And then looking at where we're at today and where we're going forward for a little bit of a vision of redevelopment with the principal developer, focusing on the 4 zones instead of 5 zones in the draft master plan framework. We've really narrowed it down to 4 specific zones, and we'll talk about those. You can see what's incorporated in each of those. And then we walk through feedback on the website of specific issues and way ahead timeline. And we'll talk to you about the website and how that works and how you can provide input. Next slide. So talking about the 1,000 or so public comments that were gathered through the Federal Register and all kinds of meetings that were held over a year and a half period leading up to the draft master plan being developed. They had a clean slate. All things were considered, a lot of input. It's different than the process we're in now. We've been on the ground for 5 years. We have a way forward. We have several buildings under construction. We have the phases of the principal developers draft community plan. So we're really focusing on getting feedback that'll help us flesh out additional areas, make the most use of most of the campus that we can, really trying to get into all that open space, recognizing some of the constraints we might have, but yet some of the opportunities as well. So we'll have some slides here that you can see, and then those slides will be posted. And some of the graphics will be pulled out and posted separately so you can manipulate those and improve your ability to see those individually outside of the slide deck. So you can see these 16 areas, specific amenities we're looking for feedback on, want to stir people's brains to give us some good feedback. Think about what they'd like to see, what veterans need. We know we're talking to general public and veteran groups and veterans themselves in all these outreaches and some subject matter experts who really deal in these areas. So we want to put this out there, and we'll talk about ways to get us information on that based on the documents that we talk about and how to really bring all that together and provide your desires to us so we can understand those as we go forward in the development of this working draft of the master plan 2022-2027. Next slide. So in developing this master plan, we just want to take a slide here and talk about not necessarily 5 tasks, but the 5 phases that we're moving through. We've got check marks next to task 1. We've done all those things already. Moving forward, we've engaged with the VA Chief of Staff, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation with some of our partners, but really talked with the integrated project team as well and briefing them on where we're at and how we're developing this. That's the project team that is within VA. It's led by the chief executive here, the VA Chief of Staff for the team, but it has the Office of Asset Enterprise Management, Construction Facility Management, VHA, our higher headquarters, and VISN, our Veteran Integrated Service Network, our immediate higher headquarters. They're in there as well. And we're working all these projects and things together in the development of the master plan. You can see the other things. What's important is stakeholder engagement and evaluating feedback. We didn't want to just put out a master plan document to comment on. We wanted to share information and take information along the way and incorporate that feedback into what we're developing. Of course, we will have a process here that includes the Federal Register for community input for 30 days. And you'll have access to all those documents, but we didn't want to wait and not have all the other supporting documents available. They're available now, and we'll release them as we develop more and get some other annexes and different things out there. You can see our timeline. So we're trying to shoot for the early October to get the draft master plan 2022-2027 working document out there so that folks can comment on that, and that'll run through the first couple of weeks of October to the first couple of weeks of November, and then we'll finish synthesis and incorporation of that information and hope to have the document completed early December and submitted up the chain on its way to the Secretary's office for his signature. Next slide. So engagements are important. We had the kickoff on August 19th I talked about. We created a website, and we'll talk about that. That's within our West LA draftmasterplan.org website. We'll talk about how the feedback works again. We briefed the Chief of Staff in the integrated project team governance board here at GLA, and then conducted a master plan workshop with some subject matter experts, consultants, developer team, master planning project team, and other VA departments here, and back at VACO headquarters, and talking about what we're doing and how we're doing it and what we're incorporating. And some of the same subjects that'll be presented here were discussed in that group, and a lot of feedback. And there was consensus that we really push for public opinion and veteran opinion on these areas so that we can get feedback. And we'll have other mechanisms for feedback along the way. Next slide. So just wanted to take a second here as I try and wrap this up. I've got 2 slides left. So these top 3 documents that you see here, the record of decision on September of 19, the PEIS, the programmatic environmental inspection statement, that is posted. The Campus Historic Resource Plan is posted, so you can review each of those. The draft community plan done in the last year and a half, 2 years by the principal developer is posted, and that's 400 and some pages of a lot of good data and thought in there about different services, layouts, setups. So a lot of information in there that's already out there for folks to look at. The draft South Campus Master Plan, that's not really a master plan in and of itself as much as it's part of the overall West LA campus master plan. And that's the commitment in the draft master plan to reinvestment in healthcare on the South Campus. So we're looking at, the investment in a new critical care center, a new bed tower, which is a new hospital, just like a VA medical center, just like Building 500 is for us today, but a new one. A new consolidated research center, a new centralized power unit or station, a ambulatory care center, 2 parking lots, one being provided by Metro, but all for veteran use, not for Metro use at all, for veterans and staff. So all of those plans are being worked by higher headquarters. The Office of Construction Facility Management drives the timeline on those. Several of those projects are in different stages of planning with design and development, but not all committed to yet by VA. So we continue to work that, but we'll include that information in the master plan working document that we come up with in early October. So agenda items for our workshop that we had was good. We talked about community development. You can see that there, how the community here on West LA campus would link with the Brentwood community, the other community to the west, Westwood community, looking at all those different areas that surround the campus, access and circulation, getting on and off the campus, around the campus, the road connections, bike paths, walking paths, all those different things. Some circulation as to where we want traffic to be coming and where we don't want traffic to be coming so that we can have some quiet areas and quiet time, quiet space. And talking about the open space, trying to make the most use of all the space or envisioning the most use of all the space over the period. So the master plan stretches out for another 15 to 20 years with development going on and on. That was the long-term vision to really continue to develop the campus and make more and more. Of course, we're focused on housing as the priority right away, getting the environmental and historical things out of the way and the approvals to do a lot of work and how many housing units we can actually have on the campus. Next slide. So this is the last slide I really wanted to show you before I turn it over to Johnson Fain, but the 2016 draft master plan had the vision of the campus. You can see all the infrastructure and different things laid out, adequate rendition of what the campus looks like. You can see the draft community plan and the draft South Campus master plan with Metro inserted on the center portion here. You can see how we're really intensifying the use of the land for the South Campus to fulfill that commitment of a re-energizing of healthcare services for the veterans throughout the community here, the greater LA area and all of West LA and GLA's jurisdiction, as well as a draft community plan up in the north, some road networks and access issues that are being identified. And then off to the right, the existing aerial view of the West LA campus, just a good snapshot, a good view that I like, showing all the things in real time that we're dealing with right now. That image is probably a year old or more. Okay, I'll turn it over to Johnson Fain.
Yes, thank you, Mr. McKenrick. I noticed that there's some questions that are coming up, but I assume we'll be answering those at the end of the presentation.
Correct. We'll have a question and answer session at the end.
Okay, so if you can just go to the next slide, please. So Hello, everyone. I'm Kersu Dalal from Johnson Fain, and with me we have John Jackson from our office. We were involved in the 2016 draft master plan, and so it's exciting to be back working on this site after 5 years. As Mr. McHenrick mentioned, there's been a lot of development that's happened in those 5 years that we've been away from this project, and so we've been spending the last month really pouring through some of those documents like the environmental impact study, the historic resources plan, the community plan, which is in its draft form, and there's some great work being done on the 80-acre area that's defined by the principal developer. These next 7 slides will just give you a sense of some of the areas of site analysis that we've been looking at as our initial part of the master planning process. They focus on various topics like history, circulation, etc. But besides describing what's in the graphics on the left of each of these slides, we wanted to draw your attention to the light blue box on each slide. In those, we have some pointed questions for the veterans and various other stakeholders in terms of the kinds of feedback that we are hoping to receive that will then inform our planning process as we continue on this effort over the next 3 months. So like most of our projects, we always begin with a historic analysis of the site. And in this case, we were really helped by the Historic Resources Plan and the PEIS that we didn't have the advantage of referring to when we did the 2016 plan. A couple of key features to mention as part of the new historical analysis. I mean, there's 2 buildings that are identified by the red dash circles. Those are both on the National Historic Register. The entire North Campus and the cemetery and part of the South Campus just south of Wilshire. You can see a lighter red dash line. That's the historic district that has been identified. So the buildings in orange reference some of the significant contributing buildings that have a potential for adaptive reuse. Besides that, the blue dashed lines that you see refer to certain configurations of roads that are of unique character. They're like these fan-shaped organization elements that buildings and the roadways are actually arranged around. And those smaller blue arrows reference some of those actual connections on the site, which will all be things that we build upon, keeping in mind what the principal developer's community plan has already done, but really advancing that over the next few months. In terms of feedback from various stakeholders, as I mentioned, the questions in the blue boxes are really where we want feedback. All these questions will also be on the master plan website, so you'll be able to go there and look at these graphics in more detail. I realize right now I've got to kind of go through them rather quickly, but there'll be an opportunity for you to really pore over them, print them out if you want, and then answer these questions. The first question we have pertaining to the historical buildings is, how do you see some of these buildings being reused? And that's really something we'd like feedback from the veterans community on. So with that, I'll move on to the next slide. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was the open space character of this 388-acre campus. It's really one of the few areas in all of West LA where you get a sense of the natural topography of the land because it hasn't been disturbed as much as some other areas of West Los Angeles. Of particular importance are the dark green arroyos that act as natural features on either side of the North Campus and actually connect all the way up to the Getty Center through various neighborhoods. So that's something that we could use to really develop some potential ecological habitats. The lighter green areas are some of the more maintained open spaces. What we've noticed that there's an abundance of open space, but in some cases they're not well utilized. And so the two questions we really had for stakeholder feedback were dealing with, one, how do you think, what new types of open spaces would you like to see on the campus? And also, what kind of activities do you foresee in these spaces? So whether they're community gardens, plazas, pedestrian promenades, things like that. And so we'd really like your feedback on those particular aspects of the open space element of the plan, which we'll be developing over the next few months. Next slide, please. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was the environmental constraints. And in this case, there's not really a pointed question we had for the stakeholders, but just to make the stakeholders aware that there are certain constraints, particularly things like landslides that are shown in the darker pink color. Because we are in earthquake-prone Southern California, that's an issue. The fenced off area for the historical waste disposal site in the northwest corner of the site is an area that's kind of off limits. And so we are aware of that, and we weren't aware of that when we did the 2016 plan. So that's one of the things that we'll definitely be incorporating into our new work. And then from the environmental impact study, we've also learned about things like the light purple area, that's an area prone to liquefaction. So we've got to be aware of that when we propose any new buildings in the area, as well as the darker purple, which is about significant mitigation measures and cleanup that might be needed where there might be some contamination in the area. So that's something that we'll also be exploring more carefully as we develop the plan. With that, if we can go to the next slide, I'll hand over to John Jackson from our office, and he'll talk about a couple of other site analysis considerations. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, everybody. This is John. I too was intimately involved in the 2016 efforts, a lot of the town halls. So if you attended those, then we've likely met at some point. I'm going to talk through a few of these pages now. The first one being site context, and this is really related to the general campus location and its physical setting. First, you'll see the various colors surrounding the site. The orange and the yellow being residential, orange being the higher density residential, and then the pink colors being commercial. And the opportunity here is really enhancing accessibility to those commercial areas for veterans, really getting that public vet interaction. The constraint being that this is a high income area, so the cost of living may be a significant barrier for vets trying to go to those places. The red squiggly lines are physical barriers. So the 405 itself divides the campus from Westwood and UCLA to the east. While at the same time, though, providing views into the site, and particularly the engineering area, which is located south of the Columbarium and north of Wilshire. Wilshire Boulevard itself is a significant barrier, effectively dividing the north campus from the south campus. And then the green lines, those are what Kurtz referred to earlier and are the natural site features, the topographical features. These are quite unique in that they've been paved over or bulldozed across LA. And this is one of the few places in Los Angeles where you can see these natural features still existing. In addition to that, they provide an amount of security and also help with the tranquility of the site. So while we're familiar with the site and its context, we're not there on a daily basis. So our feedback is related to that, and we're looking to understand what opportunities and constraints related to the general campus context do you think should be considered? Next slide, please. Next is access and circulation. And this is driving, this is taking transit, biking, walking. New since the 2016 plan is the under construction subway station. We knew it was coming at the time, but it's actually coming to fruition. And it's a huge opportunity, obviously, for how people will be able to get to the site from all over the greater LA region. But at a local level, the threat is obviously that this is the terminus of the subway station, and local residents might see this as an opportunity to do a park and ride. We understand that as part of the subway station being here, mitigation measures, monitoring were included as part of that. So ensuring that that happens is absolutely critical to the future accessibility of the campus, especially in the southern area. Also is the road network, which is obviously the basis of the circulation system. And according to our traffic engineer, and as you can see on the diagram itself, the road network is extremely strong in the east-west direction, the smaller arrows, whereas in the north-south direction, it's quite constrained, with Bonsall really being the primary and only spine. The opportunity here is a secondary way of emergency access. So there's an existing road behind to the west of the Cal Vets facility, so enhancing that and making that connect to the site. We also want to acknowledge the extreme potential for enhanced pedestrian, hiking, biking facilities on the campus, and that is really helped by the park-like setting and the climate in the area. And then finally, we want to note that it is our intent to control the entrances to traffic. And we heard this loud and clear in 2016, and nothing has changed in that regard since then. So with that, the stakeholder feedback that we're looking for are, what do you think are the most important issues in improving how people get around the campus? And then secondly, how could that north-south circulation be improved for pedestrian cars in transit? Next slide, please. So since 2016, leases have been canceled, they've been renegotiated, they've been newly initiated. And this map right here on the left, while hard to read, is a composite of all of that. And the link shown on this page, the West LA Draft Master Plan website, has details on each of these. The enhanced use leases are the vehicle that are being used to do the permanent supportive housing. And then the 2016 master plan, and after that, legislation was passed. This is the West LA Leasing Act, to allow for veteran-centric amenities on campus. So that's what our stakeholder feedback here is about. And this was referenced earlier, is what are the new services and amenities that you'd like to see on the campus? Next slide, please. And then finally, this is kind of a synopsis of what both Kersu spoke to earlier and what I've spoken on, showing kind of the key opportunities and constraints across the entire campus. And it's messy. It's necessarily messy because the campus is quite complicated. And as was mentioned earlier, high resolution PDFs of these will be available through the website. What we wanted to point your attention to are the red shaded areas. These are what we call the key redevelopment opportunity areas. And two in particular to look at are in the center, the town center, number 4, and number 5, which we call the utility service and opportunity area. So the town center, it's as the center of campus and the amenity hub. We're looking specifically for stakeholder feedback on that, on the types of uses that should be included in that town center, and who do you think will be using those amenities. And then secondly, in the service and utility opportunity area, this is the area south of the Columbarium adjacent to the 405. In 2016, we had a redevelopment plan for that area that really focused on job training. Since that time, we've learned that this area is really critical for a lot of the back of house, the service, the storage needs for the rest of the campus that really allow the rest of the campus to both operate and redevelop. So while job training is still a huge part and something that we heard of loudly in the first town hall, it may need to be located elsewhere on campus. So the second question is about that. How do you see job training being conducted on campus, and how should it be integrated into the plan? Thank you, and I'll hand it off to the next presenter. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, and thanks again for having us. My name is Oscar Alvarado, a Vice President of Housing Development here with Century Housing, one of the 3 developers in the principal developer team. I'm joined this evening by Brian DeAndrea, also with Century Housing, and Steve Peck with US Vets. Next slide, please. The West LA Veterans Collective is a partnership comprised of 3 Los Angeles-based organizations. Together, our team has decades of experience serving veterans in Los Angeles County and beyond. 2 of our 3 organizations are led by veterans and were founded by the late Judge Harry Pregerson, himself a World War II veteran that dedicated his life to serving our community's most vulnerable. Our third partner, TSA, is based in Brentwood, just a few blocks from the VA. The partnership we formed is a natural one. We've been working together for many, many years, including at places like the villages at Cabrillo and Long Beach. Next slide. Our group's mission is one of promoting recovery, wellness, and a more hopeful future for veterans. We'll do this by creating a thriving and supportive community. Next slide. We initiate our community planning efforts by committing to a set of guiding principles. For instance, this will be a holistic community. It's more than simply housing. It's about wellness, connections, opportunity, and pride. We acknowledge that the voice of veterans is of fundamental significance, and we exercise modesty in new construction while uplifting the historic character of the community. Next slide. The campus is a sprawling piece of property. It's historic and very beautiful and serves a very important purpose. To do justice to the setting, we developed a set of urban design strategies to guide our planning and development activities. These include creating a sense of hierarchy and order, concentrating and clustering our developments to foster social interactions, and fostering connections to distinct areas, resources, and amenities. Next slide. Our community plan contemplates both adaptive reuse of existing historic buildings and new construction. Where we create homes through adaptive reuse, we've taken care to approach with a historically sensitive touch and to honor the history of individual structures in their next life as housing for veterans in need. About 2/3 of the total housing units will be located in newly constructed buildings, and about 1/3 will be located in renovated buildings. Next slide. Our community plan contemplates over 1,600 homes developed over 4 distinct phases of development. This includes 1,450 homes built by the principal developer team, with 241 homes developed by others. We are currently working on phase 0 of development, which will deliver 241 homes, including the first development that will be completed by the principal development team, which is building 207, and that building is already in construction. The team is hard at work on pre-development activities of phase 1 projects, which will deliver another 603 homes to the community. Regarding projects in phase 1, we have 5 developments that have already received commitments of VASH vouchers to support future residents who will live there. And we have 2 developments in particular, buildings 402 and 404, that recently received a combined $22 million in capital support from the County of Los Angeles. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass things on to Steve Peck with US Vets to discuss our outreach and engagement in more detail.
The next slide, please. Good evening. I'm Steve Peck, President and CEO of US Vets. We have been doing this work for 28 years here in Los Angeles and 6 other states. So we're very pleased to be working on this effort. We are very much guided by the Draft Master Plan and the West LA Leasing Act. So we knew what our charge was. In addition to the housing that we are building, we knew that we had to create a community, but it is more than that. It is a service-rich community. We've spoken to numerous partners in the community to get the demographics of veterans that are out there that may need this, and what the impression was of people who serve veterans as to what was the need, particularly for this campus. This campus is unique in both its size and in its ability to provide a joint level of services between nonprofits and VA. So we've gone out to everyone from the federal government to the state to local partners, both the city and the county, asking them to give us feedback on what they expected at the campus and what we should be building, what should be the kinds of services that we should be providing. Next slide, please. This is a very brief list of the entities that we have talked to. We've been talking to most of them since 2019. The LA Veterans Collaborative, Mayor Garcetti's Military and Veterans Affairs Council. We've participated in multiple VA town halls. We're the co-sponsor of the Suicide Prevention Initiative in Los Angeles. So we will be bringing that expertise. We've spoken to the Brentwood homeowners and the Brentwood Chamber, making sure that they were satisfied with the kind of community that we were developing. We've spoken to CalVet leadership. As you know, the CalVet home is on the site. And VSO leadership to make sure that we were really listening to the veterans in the community that have a stake in this. So we elicited feedback from all of them, and I want to talk about a few of the questions that we have been asked that we have subsequently responded to. We were asked if we would serve severely disabled. Yes, we will. We will serve disabled, aging, female veterans, both single and veterans with children. They're chronically homeless, chronically mentally ill. We want all those populations to be here because we know that we'll be able to provide this rich array of services that will serve all of them. Will we serve aging veterans? Yes, absolutely. They'll be included in the permanent housing that will be building on campus, but initially in building 207, which is the first building to be completed, that building is dedicated to senior veterans, which are one of the fastest growing populations among the homeless veteran population. So we were speaking with the VA geriatric team about providing additional services for them. They have VASH vouchers, but we know that VASH case management isn't going to be sufficient to meet their needs. So we're talking with them. We're also working with the Medicare and Medi-Cal to see if we can provide additional services, home health care, et cetera, to that population, and thus keeping them out of a nursing home, keeping them out of CalVet, and really including them in this community, which we believe will keep them healthy. Will we serve female veterans? Yes, we're doing two things. U.S. Vets started a women's program back in 2001 at Villages Cabrillo, the advanced program, and we've been operating that program ever since, providing a range of intensive services for post-traumatic stress, for military sexual trauma. We've seen thousands of female veterans in that program, and we'll be bringing that model to the West LA VA. Women with their children will also be in the permanent housing across the campus. What kind of services will we be providing? As I mentioned, we'll be serving all populations. We'll be providing mental health counseling, employment assistance, wraparound services, working with the VA for them to provide the kinds of services that we cannot, psychiatrists, medical, of course. We'll also be providing homeless prevention. We've designated Building 300 on the north part of the campus as our service hub. And in addition to all the case managers and VASH case managers that are in the individual buildings, we'll have 15,000 square foot service center. And we've spoken with a number of partners. There'll be legal services, Veteran Peer Access Network will be there, legal services, and all the prevention services that USS now provides at its Veterans One-Stop Service Center at Patriotic Hall downtown. So reaching out to women veterans who quite often don't come to the VA and have a very high rate of suicide. So we've engaged them through a web portal called Women Vets on Point. We have Outside the Wire program providing mental health to young veterans, mostly in community colleges. So we'll be bringing that mental health service here, and our career development initiative, connecting with veterans who may be unemployed, catching them before they become homeless, getting them jobs and getting them back into the community. We've been asked about transportation. It's been mentioned that the Metro will be at Wilshire Boulevard. We've met with Metro a couple of times, and we've talked to them about first mile, last mile. How do veterans get from the northern part of the campus down to the Metro, which then gives them access to all of Los Angeles? We've talked to the DAV about that. They provide transportation now on campus. There are going to be additional walking paths. We're straightening out those sidewalks so wheelchair vets can get from north to south readily without having to go on the street. Bikes, there'll be bike racks around so that they can get back and forth. Scooters, whatever means we can think of that veterans will use, will be making those available on campus. We're talking with Office of Asset and Enterprise Management about locating a canteen and store on campus. As you know, there's a small canteen on campus. We have the opportunity in Building 13, which is a large building, which we imagine to be the City Hall, which faces our town center, to put a store, canteen. There will be an outdoor patio. It'll be a gathering place. There will be the large room where we'll hold career fairs, events such as Veterans Day dinner, Christmas dinner, et cetera, to bring people together. So the whole goal is to create this vibrant community that we've all talked about, provide the services that are needed on campus, and really give the opportunity for veterans to come to heal. They will either stay there indefinitely, or they will come, they will heal, and they will move back out onto the campus. I am handing it off to Brian from Century City.
Thank you, Steve, and good evening, everyone. My name is Brian DeAndrea. I am Senior Vice President at Century Housing. If we could please flip to the next slide, that'd be great. So I want to take a moment and just share with you a couple of accomplishments that we've achieved over the past 2.5 years that our team has been engaged with the VA. And I want to preface all this by sharing with you that none of this would have been possible without our very productive partnership with the VA. And it's the full alphabet soup of the VA. It's the crew at GLA, Greater LA Health Center. It's OAEM, it's CFM, it's VACO. What we found is that all elements of the VA have been by our side, hand in hand, working with us quietly and modestly to achieve all the progress I'm about to share. So starting off from a planning perspective, at the last master plan meeting, we shared with you the draft community plan that's available on both our website as well as the West LA Draft Master Plan website, available for public review and comment. Underpinning that plan was an extensive amount of outreach that Steve just got done sharing with you. The plan builds upon the framework for a draft master plan that the Johnson Fain team was involved with a couple of years ago, and represents our actionable roadmap to delivering on the VA's commitments and obligations to our veterans. Our joint planning effort with the VA has also resulted in environmental clearances, both from a NEPA, which is the federal environmental regulation, as well as a CEQA perspective. So those are very important clearances that basically pave the way for us to get started on development activity. From an advocacy perspective, just recently, thanks to the leadership of Senator Feinstein and Congressman Ted Lieu, the West LA Campus Improvement Act was signed into law by President Biden. That also will enable the development of a successful and sustainable community on the North Campus. We have been conducting a wealth of infrastructure assessment activities. As we shared with you a little earlier, the dry utility project is nearing completion, and we are working closely with the VA in launching several initial phases of a wet utility improvement project, and also beginning to think about transportation improvements. From a social and organizational perspective, we've recently hired Tess Banco as our Director of Community Development. Tess has joined us this evening. Some of you probably know Tess. She will be charged with helping to establish our 501c3 nonprofit backbone organization that will serve as a convening entity on the North Campus and help to create a cohesive community amongst all of the providers on the North Campus, including both our organizations as well as groups like New Direction, the VA itself, CalVet, and others. And then one thing that's not listed here, but something that we've been very quietly working on, is funding. We have been applying for numerous state and local funding sources. As many of you probably know, affordable housing deals can take some time to put together. Oftentimes they require 4 to 8 or more funding sources. So there's a painstaking process we've been ensconced in to amass the capital we need to break ground on the initial phases of construction. We're pleased to report this evening that we have raised more than $95 million of capital thus far, $95 million of commitments, along with 400 project-based VASH vouchers that have been pre-committed to projects on the North Campus. We have more than $50 million of pending applications outstanding with the state, with more to come. Next slide, please. So as we look to the year ahead, we will be completing our planning activities. We will be fully pivoting to pre-development and construction activities. We are hoping to break ground on a couple of projects next year. We're excited to share more with you on that in the near future as we await outcomes on some of our funding applications. We're hoping to break ground on the several wet utility projects, working in concert with the VA. We will be implementing our backbone organization efforts, working closely with Tess and all of the partners on the North Campus. And we will continue to advocate and raise capital for the significant needs that exist on the North Campus. Next slide, please. So as we spoke to earlier, this isn't simply about housing. It's not just about the bricks and sticks. This is about building community. That's what we've been charged with creating. That doesn't happen on its own. It requires partnership. It requires partnership with other organizations and service providers. It requires an investment in amenities, in open spaces. It requires an investment in campus programming. And throughout all of our planning efforts, we have really embraced this concept of collective impact. It's something that you can see in living color down in Long Beach at the Villages at Cabrillo. It's the notion of convening various stakeholders to pursue a common agenda. And so our common agenda is the creation of the supportive and therapeutic community of, for, and by our veterans to promote their wellness and recovery. We also envision the concept of establishing a continuum of housing on the North Campus. It isn't just about the permanent supportive housing that we're creating, but creating a seamless continuum that incorporates programs like New Directions, that incorporates programs like CalVet and the nursing home that the state operates, the VA's domiciliary. So taking all of those programs, weaving them together with our permanent supportive housing, and creating opportunities for veterans to access housing based on their unique needs. And that's housing in a community that's focused on healing and engagement and self-improvement. And one place where I think this notion of community really comes together for us is in the town square area that is centered around Building 13. You can learn more about this in the community plan on the website that I referenced earlier. But based on extensive feedback we've received from our veteran community over the past 2.5 years, our town square area will be programmed with a host of amenities and services, neighborhood services like a canteen, a post office, a social hall area, meeting space for our residents, a welcome center, space for the VA police, administrative offices for our partner organizations. And so in short, this town center will be the heart of the community. And like I said, it is ultimately a community of, by, and for our veterans. Next slide. Drawing on a Navy term, this is truly an all hands on deck effort. We as the principal developer can't do this alone. The VA can't do it alone. We need all of you. Together, we're working on something that is truly extraordinary. Nothing of this scale has been accomplished before around the country. And so we've listed here a few ways that you can support this effort. One is we would love your feedback on the notion of naming our community. There is a SurveyMonkey available at the link listed on the slide. Please take a few minutes and complete the survey and give us your thoughts on prospective names for the community. We also are seeking your help in terms of communicating all of the progress and transformation that is happening. There's a lot of negativity out there. There's also a ton of positive things that are happening on the North Campus, and we need your help to tell that story. We also want to hear any of your inspiring stories of programs or your experience on the North Campus, photographs or artifacts that you have from the North Campus. We are amassing lots of history, and you can see some of that in the community plan today, but we would love to have your stories. And lastly, I think there are a lot of opportunities to volunteer your time, whether it's with organizations that are currently working on the North Campus, or whether it's through the VA's voluntary services opportunities. We encourage you to consider giving of your time in pursuit of this common agenda we're all pursuing. And so with that, we will wrap up our formal presentation. I think I'll turn things back over to Mac And then I know there's ample time for Q&A later this evening.
Agenda here of engagements that we're going to have. We're here today at the second engagement on 9/9. We're going to engage with the VCOEB at a public meeting at the end of the month. There's also another town hall engagement where we'll go over some more details and share other information that's come to light as far as the activities that we're doing for research and development into what the working draft of the master plan would look like. And then, of course, hope to get it out the first couple of weeks. That's our target of October, to have that 30-day posting on the Federal Registry so folks can provide input. But of course, we've had input and dialogue along the way as well, and pointing folks to a lot of the seminal documents and the inclusive things so that they don't necessarily have to wait for the Federal Registry to come out. But with the Federal Registry, you also get a copy of the working draft and some of the annexes and other things that are detailed into construction and other activities. And some of the slides you saw tonight will be separate. And of course, those we'll talk about where those are available for review now, and we'll hang those slides as well as the independent graphics on those slides of the campus where you can see the flow, circulation, opportunities and constraints. And then hoping to get the final product up to the Secretary's office through the leadership chain, moving that up around the beginning of December. Next slide. So there's two slides here. This first slide focuses on what's at the bottom there, the feedback questionnaire. And this is exactly what we talked about last time we met. You can go to this location. There's 3 steps to submit information on a questionnaire. You choose the area, and then you can provide free text. We've also allowed for the submission of documents to be uploaded, so we can get more text or more graphics or other documents or other input you want to share with us. So want to make sure everyone's aware of that and the process, and you get to it through the West LA draftmasterplan.org website. And then there's a master plan 2022-2027 button you can hit. And just to the left of that, 2 buttons over, is the library button. We'll go to the next slide. We have called out a few buttons here where you can see the master plan 2022-2027 information concept paper. A good paper. It's not too terribly long, but it goes through the some of the background, where we're at today, what the way forward looks like if you lean into it and really develop the parameters of it. And then draft community plan as well is posted there, and that's several hundred pages, and there's some good diagrams in that. One that talks about some of the amenities contemplated, the coffee shop and food services and other things that we'll need to really help the community thrive. And then town hall presented materials, things that we present at the town hall will be hung in this last blue area, and you can click and go in there and see those. And we'll have some of these graphics in a separate deck, so you can download those and manipulate those as well. Next slide. Okay, that brings us to questions. So we've had a bunch of questions come in. So I'll ask Medina to read each question and we'll answer it.
Thank you, Mick. The first few questions are from Jim Zenner. The first one is VA planning on contracting out the HUD-VASH services in the newly constructed units or providing the HUD-VASH services directly?
So I can say that we already have the model in building 209, buildings 4 and 5 at Sepulveda. And that's how the enhanced use lease program is going to work for us, in that there will be HUD-VASH vouchers available. We've already looked at setting some aside. I believe that helps them in their financing package, if we can do that. That's no different than any other communities around our jurisdiction that need confirmation, a letter of commitment that VA will provide certain services, the counselors to come by and do some of the counseling and the checking. But the HUD-VASH vouchers are contracted out through that HUD-VASH voucher program allocation.
The next question is, which zone was left out of the new plan and why?
Okay, so no sleight of hand here. Healthcare is healthcare. We've kept zone one. We recognize that. Zone two, care coordination and the draft master plan framework was pretty loose for us. So we've really looked at that as long-term care and auxiliary services. So we're really trying to redefine some of the things we see in there as we've learned more about how the campus can be developed and what we're needing. And then zones 3 and 4, veteran housing and the town center, we've combined into some of what Steve Peck talked about in veteran housing and community services to include the town center. So we really don't want to separate those because we're trying to build a collective community. And we think those are really in one area. And then the outer ring, really, we've renamed that the veteran community interaction and engagement area or zone. So you're same things Mr. Peck's talking about. We need veteran community interaction and engagement outside of their housing, trying to get them engaged and interacting and all those other things that make it a better community for all and the services that they want and need outside of their specific housing.
Are any of the CLCs focused on recently transitioned veterans that are attending school or looking for employment and not sure what their next step is?
So let me just back up a little and say that community living centers are nursing facilities. There may be some transition in there, but there generally not a lot of transition. Individuals coming into the CLCs are there for the medical nursing care and the subsistence and the quality of life that they receive in a nursing facility. So I'm not quite sure what is meant by schools and transitioning and other things, but glad to take that offline and have a further discussion. I might be misunderstanding portions.
Jim Center has a follow-up question, and he asks, will the principal developers be providing clinical HUD-VASH services?
So I can tell you how we do it in a standard HUD-VASH environment. They are required to have in the ULs, they are required to have a counselor and a service provider. So as much as a social worker is a clinician and social workers are required to help in these areas, they will have that available to them in that area. That's part of the requirement. We send out our social workers to supplement and to support, and we commit to that when we give letters of commitment. But the actual provider, I don't know whether it will be the principal developer or some other entity that gets contracts for these services under the HUD-VASH voucher program, but they do have to provide certain social work clinical, but no other clinical per se.
Jim also asked whether there will be a survey that goes out to veterans living on campus and West LA VA-based employees on what amenities they would like on the campus.
So part of our engagement is early, often, and continued. That's with these town halls, the website that we have. We can certainly send out information to individuals who don't have access to or choose not to participate in the multimedia type environment that we have here. But also we have the Federal Registry, which is in some form a survey. It sends out the draft document. It may have other materials attached to it. It has an explanation of what's going on, what we're asking for, review and comment, and it'll be out there for 30 days. So we will certainly make efforts to advertise that across the campus as well. We know where the veterans are here on campus in CTRS, our emergency shelter, Bridge Home, the transitional housing in 116, the domicile area where they're receiving care, as well as 209 and our welcome center and some other locations. So we can certainly do reach out to them. Thanks.
Irma asked if there will be affordable small businesses in the area for veterans, such as grocery stores, shopping malls, dry cleaners.
So this is truly, as Mr. Peck said, new and innovative and never been done before. So there's some challenges we face. We're on a federal facility here. We do want to have services for veterans. We know we have a way forward through the canteen services where if they do not provide services of certain types or they're unable to do it in their mission constrained environment to what they have to do. They can open that up to outside entities. We have a barber that had been here for years and we're trying to get that back with COVID. So working on that, we can do salons, we can do other things. We have to approach that as kind of like a policy change or pushing the envelope to see, can we get a dry cleaner? Can we get the other things we need? If the canteen services doesn't want to or isn't able to provide a multitude of food services and coffee shops and things, they could allow others to come on campus. So we have to work that as we go. There's no hard and fast rules. And then you have to convince those service providers that it's going to be worthwhile, profitable, or something they want to do on campus. And that's some of the challenge with some of the campuses around the country where Starbucks and others come on and it's not profitable for them because you have a very captured audience and a very short hours of operation. But maybe with a larger community that's here 24/7, we might do better.
And the last question we have at the moment is whether there are any specific plans to redevelop the Heroes Golf Course. I think they're referring to the one.
Redevelop the Heroes Golf Course. I don't know that there's plans to redevelop that. There are veterans and veteran groups that enjoy that and want that. We heard loudly and clearly from them when we had to shut it down due to COVID. So we have opened it back up with constraints, masking and limitations and other things. But it is outdoors, it is recreation. And I don't know that we have development or need to develop in that area. We have so much other opportunity in these older buildings and the new developments on the southern portion of the campus, not going further north on the campus at this time. I can say that there's no plans to take that away from a activity that the veterans might use and some have expressed desire to have and turn that into what might be housing or some other activity. Okay.
Okay, and it doesn't appear that there are any other questions at this time. Please remember that if you have any questions that pop up at the conclusion of the town hall, you can send an email to our public affairs team and we'll be happy to get those addressed. That email address is vhaglapublicaffairs@va.gov. With that, we're going to close out today's town hall. Thank you for joining us.